I'm Sumit, and I have 20 years of experience. I have worked in companies like Sun Microsystem, Technotree, GE, Deutsche Bank, Citibank, and I have seen the complete life cycle, and I have architected many systems. So I'm going to teach you from that whole experience, right? And I passed out from IIT Roorkee, and in this videos which we'll be sharing in our YouTube channel, we are going to not only do hands-on coding on Python, but we'll be doing live industry ready projects which we'll be doing hands-on, and we'll be doing as a part of artificial intelligence. We'll be looking at all the maths what we see in artificial intelligence, like matrix vectors, calculus, statistics, probability, and then we look at the algorithms in machine learning, deep learning. We look at NLP as well as make a chatbot, intelligent chatbots, and also how do you deploy it in the cloud. So I would request that if you have a question, right, so please ask and don't hesitate. Just keep shooting questions, because when you say live, if I keep giving if I keep talking about here, there's no use, right? So you got to be asking questions. So in start today we will be doing live coding, but the live coding will be around 30 to 40 minutes. But then there's a theory, because we are just starting with Python, right? So there's some theory out there, but you got to be asking a lot of questions there. Then only this live sessions will have any impact. Otherwise it's same as watching any other video. Okay, so this is more of a, so when you say programming, right, so you have so many languages: Java, C++, Python. Irrespective of whatever programming language is there, problem solving is a key part to it. If you don't know, given a problem to be solved, if you cannot solve it, you can't program it. So programming skills, problem solving, and knowledge of the concepts, what are the concepts involved in programming, so they all play they are all integrated. And when you start solving a problem, then you need to be, and that too, if you want to automate it, you need to be knowing these things. So what does computer do? Because at the end, what are we trying to do here? We are talking about language, Python language. So what is a Python language, by the way? So Python language is about talking to, telling some instruction to the computer. It could be laptop, it could be a mobile, it could be supercomputer, it could be anything. And essentially, it is all about telling the computer to do something. So when we say it can perform some calculations, billion calculations per second. So what do you mean by that? So if you see, you have a processor in your laptop like i5, i7. So some i5 processor would be 2 gigahertz. Like just saying 2 gigahertz means 2 giga cycles per second. That many instructions a CPU could, in fact, that processor could execute. That's what it means. And then our computer has a storage. So what is a storage? The storage could be in the form of a hard disk, or it's a RAM. So both are the storage which computer can store your data. So RAM is required only at the execution time when you are executing a program, but otherwise the storage would be there otherwise you will store your data in the hard disk. And what kind of calculation? It depends on language to language, what type of use cases they are providing. So that depends on what type of calculation you can do. And once that you define as as a programmer what you want it to do, and computer knows only what you tell them to do. Now I want everybody to actually open this up, because we'll be using this browser. This is a repl.it. This is a browser. This is a online editor where you can write your Python programs and execute it. I want you to please take this link and then open in your browser. Declarative, so types of knowledge, which okay, wait, we will not look into this. So recipe. So what is a recipe? So as it is, we are telling the computer to do something. So what is a recipe? So what is a recipe in the sense that, like, for example, if I say that I want to make a tea, so how do I make a tea? So to make a tea, I need to take a utensil. There are a set of steps which is involved. I take a pan, and in the pan I put half a cup of water. After putting half a cup of water, I'm going to put 1 teaspoon of tea, and then I'm going to wait for it to boil for 30 seconds or 1 minute. So I wait. That's another step. After I wait, then I put milk in that. Then I wait again, and I put some sort of a probably ginger or let's say ilachi in that, and then again wait for some time, for 2 or 3 minutes. Once the it starts boiling, that is the time I say that okay, the tea is ready now, and I stop. So there is a stop also there. At the end, any recipe, whatever you say, any recipe, it's a sequence of simple steps. So this step, that taking a pan, is a step, and then you putting a water in that is another step. Could you see that there were so many steps which were involved in making a tea? And there was a flow of control as well. What was the flow of control? Wait for 30 seconds or 1 minute for the water to boil, and then put the tea, or wait for let's say 3 minutes after you put the milk, and then the tea is, then you stop, then there's a stop. So there's a flow of control that specifies when each step is executed, and that's the recipe is all about programming. So whatever programming you're doing is nothing else than this set of steps which you're going to tell to the computer to do. By the way, what is a computer? Computer is, it's basically a computing, right? So it does mathematical operations, and it will only understand number. It doesn't understand not even single English character, neither any language it understands. It understands only numbers. Internally, it only understands numbers, and it can play around with numbers, and that's what compute. So I'll tell you one simple algorithm. 1 plus 2 plus 3 is an algorithm where we are telling please add these three numbers. And when you see this operation, right, so this is very important. So we in computer world, we call this as operator, programming world. It's an operator which is actually telling I'm doing some operation on two objects. So there are two objects here, two integer objects are there, 1 and 2. So you add it up, and the result of that is a 3. And then then there is another operator here which is again going to add up whatever is the result of this plus 3. So you're going to get 6. But there is a step involved that first add these two, whatever result is there, add that with 3, and that is an algorithm. So computers are machine. You could have a fixed program computer, which is something like a calculator, where you don't program it; it's already pre-programmed. Stored program computers, where you're going to program it. A machine stores and executes these instructions for you. So we'll see one example of, we'll do one whatever problem we solve. Let's say find a Fibonacci series, or find a reverse up string. So these are nothing but, we write a program to we give an input. Let's suppose we want to reverse a string. We give an input as a string, and it is the program will go step by step. We would have written how to reverse a string, and it'll reverse the string. So that is nothing but we have written a program, and that's called as machine stores and executes these instructions. Now coming to basic machine architecture. Usually any machine architecture, if you really see any laptop or any supercomputer or any mobile, so these are all computing devices. They have these four main blocks out there. A memory is there. Memories could be a RAM or a hard disk. Then it has a CPU, which is nothing but a control unit, which is nothing but a program counter. This is where it keeps track of which step the program is at. So sequentially it goes from top steps to the below steps, and it is executing each and every step. And after it executes each and every step, whatever is the output of it, either it goes to the output or it goes back to the memory for temporary storage of the output. And then it certain time, if you want to do some arithmetic operation, it is going to send it to arithmetic logic unit, which is a part of the CPU. So if you really look at it, this whole thing is could be i5 processor or i7 processor, or i3 processor, or AMD processor, right? Whatever it is. The CPU by itself has two components to it: control unit, which keeps track of which step we are executing, and the arithmetic logic unit, where whenever computing or logical unit, any logic operation has to be done, it passes it onto it. So it's module. These are the two modules inside it. It calculates that operation and gives back the result, and that's how it works. So if I say that a computer and human being, if we want to create an analogy between that, so let's say the CPU, what is there in a computer is nothing but the human mind, right? Human mind is equivalent to that. So human mind can in fact can execute steps, right? So we remember, so this is a step which we have done, like preparation of the tea. We know that we have to take the pan and put the water in that. So we are executing one step at a time. So our mind does that in fact, but then the steps are stored in the memory. So that's a program. The step whatever is there to prepare tea, and similarly if you want to in fact do something like find a Fibonacci number, so that is a program which you are stored here, which are steps of instructions, and the CPU takes one instruction at a time, just like our mind also has a memory, right? So our mind has two sections to it, memory as well as the intelligence to look into which sequence we are at. So we take each and every sequence from this memory, which how to prepare a tea, and then we execute one after the other and we keep track of it. Similarly, the program is written to give instructions one at a time, and the control unit does it. Anything arithmetic, it passes it on to it. And then what is the input? So let's say from a computer's input point of view, the keyboard and your mouse, the mic, these are the inputs. And from human point of view, the inputs are nothing but our ears, eyes, our touch and smell. Okay, and what is the output from the computer's point of view is nothing but your monitor, speaker, Wi-Fi connection. That's the output it is sending to the router to send them data. It also acts as an input Wi-Fi in fact, because whatever I'm saying is right now going as an output. From mic it goes as input, and then it goes as an output to the Wi-Fi, through Wi-Fi to my modem, and from modem it goes to your laptop or your mobile, and then from your mobile it comes as an output to you. So here in this case it is output, but then whatever you are speaking or whatever you write on the chat would come as an input to me through Wi-Fi, right? So it acts as both the cases. So even an input devices like the keyboard and the mouse has a small amount of memory from where the data gets transferred to the control unit. Like for suppose I write ABCD on my laptop and press enter, that data goes to your CPU. Okay, so that's in a nutshell like how exactly we are and how exactly a machine looks like. So once we look at the similarity, you know, so then what happens with the similarity, we could say that if this is a case, if we can solve a particular problem in our mind, if we could look at how exactly we solve it in our mind, then in that case we could also look at, so in that case we could also look at that computer would also solve in a similar way. So so whatever problem we solve, like for example Fibonacci series, we need to know, so we know that first number is 1, the second number is 1, and the third number would be the sum of the previous two numbers. So we add those two numbers in our mind, right? So how we do it mentally, right? If we could keep track of it, how we do it mentally, and what are the sequence of steps we are taking, the same thing we need to write a program to the computer. So now it's a matter of fact just knowing that how exactly computer stores the data internally its memory, and how exactly what are the syntax for giving those commands. In fact, when it comes to any basic elementary level at the stored program computer, there is no much operations involved. There are only few operations which are involved here, and those are nothing but arithmetic and logic, which is nothing but this, where you do maths. You add the number, you divide the number, you do a product of the number, and then you have another thing called a simple test and the moving data. So the moving data part is done by by the control unit from input to the memory, or from input it takes the data and gives it to the arithmetic logic unit. And also it does something called a simple tests would be done here in the logical units. Okay, like if the number is bigger than or lesser than, and this is all. A CPU which you say i7, i5 which you are saying does this is what it does, nothing else. Data movement, simple test, and some arithmetic and logical operation. Now by the way, so that is what it does it. But then if you really look at it internally, it is all that number, it is what the CPU understands. So we need human beings cannot write the instruction to a CPU computer in numbers, because we don't we cannot remember every number, what operation every number does. So what essentially we are trying to do is we wanted an interface, a language such that that language human beings can speak and human beings can understand, and it is as simple as that. It is very simple to instruct the machine to do that operations. But once we write that language, there is a interpreter, Python interpreter is there, which will take that instruction and then convert it into machine level language, which is nothing but a numeric set of instructions which computer understands. And that is the Python interpreter, which takes one instruction at a time, converts into machine level language. So programming language essentially provides a set of primitive operations, and these primitive operations are nothing but multiplication, plus, minus, divide, bigger than, equal to. We'll look at all the operators in programming language, right? So we will see. Usually you have something like arithmetic operators like plus, minus, plus, minus, logical operators, which is nothing but your bigger than, equal to, and then you have like bitwise operators, and then you have some more operators which is true for identification. So that is all it gives. And then these expressions, we will look into what are the expressions. So if you really look at mathematics, when whatever expressions you write, like 2x plus 3x plus y is equal to 2x plus 3x square, right? So these are the expressions where we are actually doing some mathematical operations. And those expressions, if you really look at it, it's doing addition, minus, plus. So this is all computer understands, plus, minus, and bigger than, lesser than. Nothing else it can understand apart from that. And hence those expressions would have those operators there. And but then they, like mathematical expressions, do evaluate to a value. So here also they get evaluated to a value. So when it comes to aspects of a language, when we talk about English language, which I am communicating to you, versus the language like programming language which is used to communicate to the machine, because as such computer is nothing but computing, it is all mathematical in nature. So all those languages would have operators which would be mathematical in nature, and no doubt, and the basic data types would also be mathematical in nature, like float, integer, bool, star, which is exponentiation, star is again a product, slash is a division, plus is a summation, your assignment operator, and then you do equal to, right? So these are the different types of operators which we'll be looking at in depth, in fact. And the English language which we are talking, its words, so which we have understood over a period of time that this word means this, and the way this words has to be constructed. So much time it has taken us for us to understand how the English language syntax is and what are semantics behind it. Right, so similarly the same thing happens here also. What is the syntax? The Python programming language has a syntax. If you don't write it properly, it will throw error for you. And the semantics, like what is the meaning behind it. So let's see one or two examples about the semantics. So syntax would be something like this: cat, dog, boy. It doesn't make sense. I don't know what is this, what is it all about. So not syntactically valid. But then if we say cat hugs a boy, it is a valid syntax. It has a meaning also. And similarly, when we talk about in programming language, then this is a string. String is a set of words, right? It's a set of character, which is a word, right? So this is a word, and then you're telling 5. So what does this mean? It doesn't have any meaning. Not syntactically valid. And in the programming language, the operator plays a very important role, that when you say two types of data, two types of objects, like this is a floating point number and this is an integer, you are telling multiply it, then you got to tell what to do with these two things. So as it is, we are telling it's mathematical in nature, right? So these operators have to be there, and this guy never had any operator, so it doesn't make any sense, and then it will throw an error. Coming to, let's say, static semantics. So what is a static semantic is which syntactically valid strings have meaning. So let's say I are hungry. Syntactically it is fine, but then in English we will not say anybody should tell like this, because it is not acceptable in English, because it doesn't static semantic error. So but then we say this as a static semantic error. Similarly in programming language, well, this we saw is a syntactically valid because there is an operator here. And but look at this, I am having operator is there, plus you want to add a 3 to a word. I've never seen this, like you can do this ever, right? It doesn't make sense from programming language point of view. You cannot do that. One is a word and then another one is an integer. So this is a static semantic error. Now, coming to the Python programs, we have the two ways you can execute Python program. One is like on a Python interpreter shell. So Python interpreter shell. Let's look at Python interpreter shell. So how do you start a Python? Once a Python is installed, if you write Python like this, so you can see that now I have opened a Python interpreter shell. So in Python interpreter shell, you could write a program like 2 plus 4, right? So I add two integer and enter it. It gives me the result as it is there. So and then there's another way of doing it is like you could have a statements command, statements instruction interpreted. Okay, shell or stored in a file that is read into shell and evaluated. So you could have a set of 100 lines, and that 100 lines of code would be executed at once. So let's see one example of it. So let's say in Python, if you say print hello, and then you say print 2 plus 3, and then you try to execute it. Look at it, it executed the hello and also said this. So 2 lines at a time it executed it. So that's another way where you can store all the program in the file and it will execute it. And understand, again, it's an interpreter, so it takes 1 line at a time and converts it into a machine readable format and then executes it, and first it takes this line, then it takes this line, and it sends it to the instruction is sent to the CPU to execute it. Coming to the objects, so we got to be looking at, when we start programming, we got to be looking at it from the object point of view. Why? Because all the data and everything in this world is like object, and every object is interacting with the other object, and in fact every object is made up of other smaller set of objects. For example, let's say universe has a lots of galaxies, which is something like it is made up of so many galaxies, right? And galaxies are made up of so many stars, and usually stars and has lots of planets around it, and all the stars and planets, if you really look at it, there like in our planet we have different types of objects like trees, human beings, living thing, non-living thing, metals, so many things are there, right? Buildings. But essentially if you really look at down towards it, they are also made up of so they are also made of different objects. And if you still go down, everything goes down to atoms. They are all made up of atoms, and atoms are made up of neutrons, protons, electrons, and you still further go down, they are also made up of some minute objects, right? So it just, there is no end to it, in fact. And if in fact if you really look at multiverse point of view, then the universe is just another object in that multiverse. So this pattern is all around us, and in programming language also we follow the same pattern. And once we follow the same pattern, object oriented programming, lives become very easy. If you are doing the coding using procedural programming like C language and all, its life is so difficult. It's very difficult to understand, very difficult to relate, and very difficult to change the code. But once you start seeing from object oriented point of view, it is very easy to write the code, understand the code, make the changes to it. Okay, in the objects, when we were talking about and different type of objects, you can do operations like different type of operation or different type of object. For example, with the fruit, you cut the fruit and eat. Vegetables, you usually don't eat vegetables raw, certain vegetables, and then you cook it, right? So different type of object, you do different types of things. So remember that point in that thing in mind. So when we say scalar objects are nothing but which cannot be subdivided. So what is a scalar object? So that's what the most fundamental level. That's the most fundamental level. Below that you cannot go. So in our when it comes to matter, that fundamental level we don't know yet. So it just goes down to God knows, we don't know right now. So is it quark or below quark, whatever is there, electrons, below electrons, what is there, we don't know. So that is at the matter level. But then it comes to our programming level, the scalars we are going to see down. But the non-scalars are the one which are made up of scalars. So let's talk about which is nothing but class concept. But then scalar objects in Python there are only 4 types of scalar objects in Python. One is integer. You can't divide an integer 5. So the integer, so integers what you have is integers. Can you go below that? No, you can't go below that. floating numbers, the real numbers. Can you go below that? No, you cannot go below the real numbers, right? Similarly, boolean is another type of object in Python, which is like, you know, true and false, which is yes or no, right? We are telling true and false. And there's a special type of number which is none type. It is only one special value, which is none, and it is similar to what you have at null in Python, not in Python, C++, C language, and as well as Java. Now coming to our first line of code, we'll try to see the type of the object. So we are talking about different types of object, right? So this is going to tell you the type of the object, because that depending on the type of the object, you do different types of operation. So you need to know what object is what type. So let's say 5 is integer, and let's guys, I want you to write this code. So let's say print type type 5, right? And I'm also going to print type hello. Let's see what is the type of the hello, and let's try to execute this. Hello is of type string str, and the 5 is type int, and 3.0 would be of type, let's say I say 5.0, that would be of type float. That's a real number. Now I think I want to spend some time. Please ask me some question. So could you ask some questions now? Otherwise, see, otherwise if it is not interactive, there's no use. Any question, let it be any question. Interpreter, what is Python interpreter, or what is object, what is the operation all about, what is the CPU, how does it execute, or what is input output, what is memory, what is Python language, or whatever it is. Or still you don't have any question, you are able to understand. Hello. Yeah, Vishwas, are you able to understand? Rahul? Yeah. Hello. Yes, any questions? Okay, Abhijit, good question. So interpreter is like a converter, right? So it's a converter. So how exactly it works is like, you know, you have a there's a syntax to it. So there is a and syntax is there, and then you convert that syntax to a machine level language. So there is a mapping of it. Usually there is a there is a once a interpreter goes, it reads a line, it the syntax tree is there. So internally you got to see that the syntax tree is created, and it checks for the syntax. If the syntax is right, once the syntax is right, then it converts it into equivalent machine level language. Okay, so first of all, it will convert into assembly language. From assembly language, assembler will work, which will convert into machine level language. And there are different interpreters for different type of hardware. Python provides those type. So if you go and install Python, it will say that do you want for Mac, or do you want it for Intel, or do you want it for I mean not Intel, Windows, or do you want for Mac, or do you want it for Linux, right? And then it also talks about whether do you want 64-bit or whether 62-bit, 32-bit. So the different types of interpreters are like that, and that's why Python is very portable. So once you write a Python code, it converts it. The interpreter which is there in that machine would convert it into a machine of the whatever underlying hardware is there, and the OS which is working for that system, it will convert it. And that's a byte code which you have it, right? PYC files are converted. You have a .py file that is converted to PYC files, and that would work for that particular machine. So well, so Abhijit, so it's a C. I mean, you have various other language, but it's usually predominantly written in C language right now. Okay. So that's called C Python. So we have a C Python for doing that. Okay, good question, Abhijit. Really good. I appreciate. So, Ramya, you have any questions? Okay, so you can type in the questions. I will again when we come, I'll look into that. How is string data type determined? Okay, Ramya, so string data type, Python says that, if that's, we will come to string in fact. So we are going to come to string anyways. So it has its own syntax for describing a string, and then it is a set of characters. It's a list of characters, which is nothing but internally represented as integers. So we are going to look into that. So what is the classification of programming language? So Python is a pure object oriented language. Okay, it's object oriented. Okay, well, I think carry on. Keep writing questions here. We will look into that. Okay, now different types of objects are there. So let's see type conversion. So we will use casting for doing that. So how do you cast one type of object to another type of object? So there are, as we saw, different types of objects are there, like float, integer, strings. So respective functions are also there. For a string, str is a function. Float is a function, and int also you have the function like this. So you supply to this function, you supply the object, and that function will convert the object to that particular type if it is possible to convert, because int and floats are related, so it is possible to convert. But otherwise, if you give a string, it might not be possible to convert a string which doesn't have a digits in it. If it is any alphabetic character is there in a string, then it will not be able to convert a string to an integer or float. Let's see this example. Okay, so that's how you do this, and we saw that printing to the console is nothing but, if you write print, it is going to print to the console. That we have already seen. And let's try to see if I try to convert 3 to float. So just write float, float function is right, and then you execute it, then you will see that it is converted into float. But what about if I want to convert a string to a float? Let's say I get 34 if I write 34.0 if I do 34.2, let's say. So it did convert it. But what about if I put something like a character in this? So it is not going to work, because a string, you cannot convert a string to float. Like this is not possible to convert because it doesn't understand. So it depends on what type of string you have given. If it should not have any apart from decimal, one decimal, it should not have anything else. Only it should have a digit. So well, coming to the expression. So what are we trying to do in expression? Basically, expression is all about combining the so you combine the object and operators to form an expression. So what do you mean by combine objects and operators to form an expressions? So let's look into it. An expression has a value which has a type, and then after you combine two objects, it will have a value which has its own type. So let's say you are constructing a bridge. Now in constructing a bridge, you're going to get two objects, two slabs of length 20 meters, and then you're going to connect them. The operator here is connecting. Okay, so you're combining these two objects using one operator, which is connect, and then you get a slab of 40 meters. Like that, you can connect so many slabs to form a bridge of half a kilometer, or let's say 1 kilometer. So that many slabs would be required, respective slabs. But then essentially the operator which you are using is connecting them, right? Similarly, here also in our lab programming language, we have objects like that, and these objects are nothing but integers, floats, strings. We can do some operations on the top of it. Either it would be plus, minus, or star, or whatever logical operators we can do with that. And at the end, this expression would be giving you another object, because at the top, when we said about, well, building a bridge, we are taking two objects and connecting them to get another new object, right, which was 40 meters length. In these two objects also, we can do some operation to get another object, and which has a value. It's a new object, right? So let's look into one example for that. Let's say take two objects I and j, which are integers, and if we add them, we are going to get another new integer, but then addition would be a new integer. So let's say 2 plus 3 would be 5. But if at all any of them is a float, then the output would be a float type. Okay, in all of the sum, difference and star. Similarly for division, irrespective whatever you do, the output is always a float. So let's look at that. So 2 plus 3 will give me 5. But if I do 3.0, then it is going to give me 5.0. So that's a float. Okay, but then if I divide 4 divided by 2, it is going to give me a float. Remember this point. It's going to give me 2.0. But if you wanted 2, then you can double slash, put it double slash, and it is going to give you an integer. Sometimes you need this because you want the output in integer. So that's when you are going to use double slash. Similarly, we have a reminder operator, which is going to give this is a modulo operator, which is going to give me a reminder. So if I take 5 mod 2, so 5 mod 2, so 2 2 is 4, and then reminder is 1, so it is going to give me reminder, which is 1. And this is nothing but your exponentiation, which is let's say 2 to, if I say 2 star 3, it is nothing but 2 to the power of 3. So that is going to give me 8. So okay, let's see, we have any other questions? Okay, 1.0 plus 2.0 is 3. Okay, is it not 3.0? It is 3.0. Harshdeep, let's see. 1.0 plus 2.0, it is 3.0. So Harshdeep, is that's what your question is? Why is 1 plus 2 not 3.0? Okay, fine guys. So keep asking. Now coming to a very important point where everybody gets confused. If you're coming from Java or C++ or C language point of from world, you are not going to get this. And then it goes, I mean, it becomes you start thinking in terms of them, and that's where you have difficulty in Python. So let's come to assignment operator. Assignment operator is all about giving a value to a variable name. So here, and remember, in Python is a dynamically typed. Till now, I have not talked about any int, float as a type in front of the variable. So we don't talk about int pi is equal to this value. We just say pi equal to this value. So what essentially happens is this value gets stored in the memory, and then value is stored in the computer memory, and assignment binds name to the value. And this assignment operator, look at this, there's one object and there is another object. So this is a variable name, gets bound to this memory. It's basically pointing to it. That's all it is doing. This is important. The type is inferred from the value. Python knows that this is a float. Similarly, if we do like this also, it will be converted into a floating value, and pi approximation is another variable name which we do it. So retrieving the value is value associated with the name or variable by invoking the name by just typing. So if you just type pi anywhere else, you can invoke the value. So let's look at the one example. Pi equal to 3.14, and you say print pi, right? So if you do like this, so what happens is you will end up printing the value of the pi. So you get the value just like that. So now let's look at one thing, like you can find the memory location where pi is pointing to by using id pi. Okay, so if you do like this, see what happens. Pi is pointing at this memory location. Okay, now if you were in Java world, if you say pi equal to let's say 4.5, okay, you will say that and if you say print id, which is the memory location where pi is stored, you will think the value would be same. But that is not the case here. Look at this, what happens. So look at, this is different memory location, which was earlier, which was pointing to 3.14, and after assigning it, pi is pointing to some other memory location. So it did not end up writing in this memory location. And that's the thing, where in Java and C++, that's what would have happened. If you say int pi equal to 3.1 or float pi equal to 3.14 in C++, and then you say pi equal to 4.5, in this memory location itself, the pi memory location wouldn't have been changed. But here now, after assignment, it has changed. Okay, so that's the thing which you have to keep in mind. So this is what is happening. So changing the bindings, you can rebind the variable name using new assignment. Just you can rebind it. So rebinding happens using new assignment statements. Previous value may still be stored in memory but lost the handle for it. You have lost the handle for it, then a garbage collector of the Python will collect it. So if you really see the radius, I assigned it as 2.2. So the memory location at 2.2 was created and it was pointing here. So, and then afterwards, when I say radius equal to radius plus 1, it is 3.2 value is stored here and it is now pointing here. But in the case of, if the case of C++ Java, if you would have done in this memory location itself, it would have made 3.2. A new memory location wouldn't have been created. But this is the difference between a C++, Java and Python. So guys, critical one, any questions? I'll just keep this slide here right now. You just absorb it and then we'll start writing your question in the chat box. I think Abhijit, we have not come to those levels, right? So I think I will not be able to answer you right now. But just to tell you that is it immutable? So in what context are you talking about? So Python objects, there are different types of Python object, right? So there are immutable objects and there are immutable objects. Okay. So when you say immutable, integers and float are immutable and strings are immutable. There are other objects which are mutable. Okay. Well, it's a good question, but then, okay, fine. Because we have not covered those parts, so yeah. So any questions on binding? So okay, did you understand how exactly it is working, binding? Because a lot of people face this problem in coding. So let's see one example of it. I mean, once a memory location is assigned value, it can't be updated. Yes, absolutely. Yes, Abhijit. Yes. Once a memory location is given a value, it cannot be updated. A new value is there, a new value is created in the memory. Good. Very good. And Ramya, is the garbage collector invoked automatically? Yes, garbage collector is invoked automatically. So it has its own algorithm there in Python. So it has its own schedule. It goes and starts collecting it after some time. Okay. So let's look at the memory assignment again. So let's say if I say pi is equal to 3.5 and if I say pi copy equal to pi, okay, and I say pi equal to 4.5, and then if I am going to print pi, and then I'm going to print pi underscore c. Can you guys tell me what will be the output of pi underscore c when I print pi underscore c? Can anybody tell me? Can you tell me what will be the output of pi underscore c? You can write in the chat box what will be the output of pi underscore c. Okay, I think I was expecting this, but let's run it. Okay, what do you see? Pi underscore c is 3.14. So this is another thing which you have to look at it. Okay, good, Prasad, good one. So you need to look at it. This is what's happening. So now what happened was pi was pointing to 3.14, and so what happened afterwards? What happened afterwards is pi underscore c. Now you are telling it to pi. So this is what happened. So let's say this is your memory location. So let's say 3.14 was stored here. Pi is pointing to this. When I do pi underscore c equal to pi, so pi underscore c is also pointing to 3.14. When I say pi equal to 4.5, 4.5 is created here. Now pi points to 4.5 and this is cancelled. Okay, and this is cancelled. So Ramya, did you understand why 4.5 was a new value was created and pi is now pointing to that? 3.pi underscore c is pointing to 3.14. If you are coming from Java and C++ world, this is what is going to happen. You have to change your thinking here. Okay, so is that clear? Because okay, got it, good. Ramya, did you get it? Okay, so I think Prasad, how can it will get updated? What do you mean by that? Yeah, hi Sumit. Yeah, Prasad, how can it get updated? What do you mean by that? Can you be more specific? Okay, so let's carry on now. So let's come to string. I think somebody asked string how it is stored and all, right? So in Python you can store 1 million characters. 1 million characters. What type of encoding is that? Unicode encoding. How many bits are there in that? 20 bits. 2 to the power of 20 is 1 million. Okay. Now with this set of Unicode characters, you can represent any character, let it be Telugu, Tamil, Kannada, English, Hindi, Marathi, or let's say whatever it is. It's like French, Telugu, I mean like whatever language, you know, Japanese, Chinese, any other character, special characters, any set of special characters or mathematics or any other science, you could represent all of them. By the way, we were talking about every object is made up of other objects, right? So string is an object which is made up of integers. Every character is a integer. So what is it? Unicode. So every character is a 20-bit representation of an integer value. Yes. So let's look at let's look at one example. Print ord will present. So I think you guys will be knowing Do you know what is how the A is represented internally? What is the number associated with A? Anybody can you tell me what type of number associated with A? Can you tell me what is the number associated with A? Anybody who knows? Capital A. You can write it on chat box. Capital A. Anybody? Anybody? Oh, okay, okay. Very, very near. Okay. It is just -2. That's all. So it's 65. Okay. And similarly, B would be 66. Okay, and that's how it goes. So, and the Z would be nothing but 65 plus 65 plus 25, which is going to be 90. Okay, great. So, well, you might say it's a ASCII code. Yeah, for example, it is ASCII code, right? But then Python ASCII code doesn't have only 256 characters. You don't have Chinese, you don't have Tamil, Telugu, Hindi in that, right? So we have Unicode characters, which is 20 bits length. ASCII characters only 8-bit length. Okay, so you have Unicode, which is 20 bit length. 1 million characters could be represented with that. Very futuristic. Still not all of them have been used. So even if at all we exhaust a whole 1 million, so probably the Python community will go ahead with adding another one bit, 21 bit. Then you can represent with the 21 bits you can represent 2 million characters. that should be good enough, I believe. So ORD would give you the internal represent. For example, ORD of a dollar. Let's see what is dollar represented as. Dollar is represented as 36, and that's how it goes. Similarly, a /n has a value somewhere in 10 or 12 range. I believe 10. Yes. So that is a special character /n, which is a enter. It is represented as 10. So to answer you, what does string consist of? String is an object which is made up of many characters, and since the machine doesn't understand characters, machine only understand numbers, a character to number mapping is there, which is a Unicode mapping. So the 256 characters of the ASCII character code is still works in Unicode. How do you represent a string? You represent a string using double quotes or single quotes or a triple quotes. Any one of them works. You can create any string, assign it hello, so don't see the SSS and SSS, but I have told is anything to do with that. So these all are strings. It is a string. S2 is also a string, and S1 is also a string. So these all are the ways of creating a string. So suppose you have single quotes, then you can have double quotes inside it, and that's a valid thing. So it's possible, and then if you print it, it's fine. Print S. So it's possible, and in double quotes you can have a single quotes just like that. So you could print it. So you need to look into it, and this using this you can have a multi-line. You could have a multi-line. Multi-line string is possible in Python, and you can have a multi-line comments in Python like this only. So you can actually print S2, and you can see that it's a multi-line comment. It's a multi-line string as well. These two doesn't have that. as we said that we were doing operation in the real world when creating a bridge. We were doing some operation on two slabs, right? So similarly, you can do an operation on a two strings. So let's say high is one variable, and then name is another variable, and their respective value is this. If I say greet is equal to another variable which I say high plus name, so I'm doing one operation on the variable high and the not variable object high, which is a string, and another object. So it's possible to combine them. It is makes logical sense, and Python has provided you these type of operation where if you do it like this, it will concatenate them. So now if you print, now if you do like this, so you could see what happened. Here we didn't have a space, right? And Anna. So we created a empty string, not empty string, one space string here, and then we got the output like this. So you could do something like this. So what essentially happens here is this two are concatenated, and you get a new string. Similarly, these two will get concatenated new string, and that new string would get concatenated to the name, and that would be assigned to these variables. And to answer Ramya, right, if the value of p can be changed, yes, value of p pi underscore c could be changed. You need to assign a new value to it. That's all. But not the memory location will not change. Okay, Ramya. So pi underscore c, the memory location will not. A new memory location would be created. Pi underscore c is going to point to that. In Python, the variable name is just a pointer. Keep that in mind. So variable name is not associated with any memory. Hard binding is not there with any memory location. Whatever value you give, it will start pointing to that memory location where the value is kept. Okay, so let's come finish this and we'll go to problem solving. Input, output, print. So print we have already done. Print can take multiple parameters as well, you know, comma separated multiple parameters. So whatever object you assign to it, multiple parameters, it will print that. So you could have something like greeting comma greet comma greeting is also possible. So look at this. So it concatenated this and then there, right? So it is also not concatenated. The print actually printed both of them together. That's all. Okay. So let's look at the input. So if you want input from a terminal, how do you get the input from a terminal? Let's look into that. So if I say input, enter something, and input will give you a string output. So it always gives you a string output, s equal to input string, and I'll print s. I also print the type of s. Okay. So let's print the type of s. So it's going to ask me the input right now. So I'm going to give testing. That's all. So it printed testing, and the type of s is string. So suppose you wanted integer and all, integer or float, then you'll have to typecast it using int. And then you can enter something, not enter, enter number. And now you will see that it will be integer now. That's how you take it from input. If you want to take an integer, this is how you do it. So now you're going to run this, enter something. So I'm going to do 45, and you saw that you know, it was 45 was printed and the type was s. So remember this thing, that if you are going to enter something else, it is not going to work, because we know that a 45a, it's not able to convert. It cannot convert a 45a to integer. So remember that point. We have different types of operators in Python, which could be done. Comparison operator on int, float, and string could be done. I and j are the variable name. Let's say comparison below evaluates to a boolean. So I bigger than j, I bigger than equal to j, I lesser than j. So these are all mathematical. This equal to is one special in Python. That means, or any other language also it is there, which says for equality, and this is not equal to, and they all evaluates to Boolean. Okay. So let's look at one or two examples here. Three less than 4 is going to give me true. Okay, and that's how it goes. And then 3 equal to 4 is going to give me false, and not equal to is going to give me true. So that is all about your inequality. And then there is something called logical operators on bools. So booleans, what is a boolean? So you have true false, right? So you can on a true and false, you can combine the true and false using some logical operators, which is nothing but not a. Suppose a was a true value, suppose whatever you write here, a not true would give me false. Okay, so and a and b, so then those values should become so true, true and false. True and false gives me and, so it's something like this: give me apple and banana. If you don't have banana, then don't give me, I'm not happy with that, I need both of them. So then only it becomes fine. So this is going to be false. But then if you have both apple and banana with you, then in that case it is true, I'm fine with that. So it's like that. But or is something like this: if you have either apple or banana, I'm fine with it. So you can have something like true, and then you have a false here. So true or false is going to give me true, because I'm fine with any one of them. So that's your that's your logical operators on booleans. So this is what it looks like. True, false is false. If anything is false, and is going to be false. Both of them has to be true for it to be true. And or anything is true, it's fine. It is only false when both of them are false. I think let's go to if condition. We are running short of time. Control flow branching. Before that, what was this? Okay, this is one example. We just saw that. We have seen it. Okay, let's do it once again for this. Can you tell me what will be the output of this? Can you tell me what will be the output of this? Can you tell me? Can anybody tell me what is the output of this? Very good. And what is the output of this? So you have a true and false here, and then I am evaluating this. So what is the output of this? Good, Lakshmi. So we have a true and false. True and false is like, again the same thing comes. True and false. Okay, great. So that's again a false. Right. Okay, let's go to the if condition. So if followed by a condition, which is again a boolean. Condition has a value true or false, and whatever it evaluates to, the expression in that block, if it is true, then that would execute these blocks. So remember, this indentation is important, and it has to get equal indentation. If it is not equal indentation, then there's an issue there. So let's look at the example now here, and let's say if 2 is lesser than 3, print 2 is less. Okay, so let's say, so you could have just another line of statement. Part of this is nothing but part of if condition. Part of if condition. So 2 is in fact lesser than it's a part of, these are 2 are part of it. So but if you don't give indentation, if you give they are not equal indentation, then there is an issue. It will tell the indentation unindented does not match any other indentation level. So they have to be at the same indentation level, then it is a part of the block. So it's as simple as that. In Java and all, you would be writing something like this. You will write a curly brace. Okay. But here we don't write curly braces. We put indentation and then we put a colon here. That's all. Colon says says that there is a block is going to start. It's very important, and then the block is going to start, and then no curly braces. This is important. Okay. So now let's say there's a elif condition comes. You can have any number of elif in this. Elif 2 is bigger than okay, let's do one thing. Num1 is equal to 2, num2 equal to 3, and elif if num1 is bigger than num2, wait, I have to change here also, num1, and here it is num2. If it is bigger than num2, then you're going to say print num1 is bigger. Okay. Okay, so it is bigger, and then you can have this is good enough. So there is nothing you need to do, and there's a string. So print takes a string as there, and then if you really run it, it is anyway going to come to this guy. But if I change the value to 4, let's say, and then if I run this, it is going to it's going to print that num1 is bigger, right? And then last part could be else. Print both are equal. So this is what your if, elif, and else is all about. Number 1 is bigger, but then if I make it 3, and if I look at it, then it will say that both are equal. So I think we are done with if condition. Remember about the indentation. If this block, the indentation is like this, and then another if could be there, then the indentation of that would be here. Okay, and then we have another one like this. And Syed, I'll be telling you about how the Python is helpful in finance field at the end of one problem statement, which we'll be doing it right now. And I think let's do one problem statement right now. We are going to do this problem statement. So here we are trying to find the BMI, that is body mass index of a person. And how do we find the body mass index of a person? Usually if you have to find the body mass index, you will be giving what is your weight in kgs, and also you need to be telling what is your height. The height could be the person, some of the people understand the height in centimeters. Well, then they can convert into meters. That's not a problem. You divide by 100. But some of the people don't know their height in meters or centimeters, so they know it in feet. So how many feet? 5 feet 9 inches or something like that. So we are giving the user that option of either entering the height in feet or meters, and formula for BMI is weight in kgs divided by height square in meters. So if the person gives the height in feet and inches, then we need to convert his height from feet and inches to the meters. Okay, and then we can calculate the BMI. And once we have calculated the BMI, we need to find out if this person is underweight, normal, overweight, or very overweight. Okay, so let's do this problem right now, and let's do this problem and check about it. But before that, I wanted to know that if you have any doubts in if condition, if condition, before going to this problem. So I'll just open this if condition, indentation, and this is if condition. Any doubts in that? Yeah, till the time you ask the question, I'll answer Syed about it. Syed, Python is very useful in finance field. Okay, so why it is useful in finance field? Because Python has a rich set of libraries. And then like you have a library like pandas, numpy, which work very well on all your tabular data, and numpy works very well with matrix type of data set. So if you really see in finance world, all these stock market equity prices, if you see, all are numbers. Okay, and then you need to be finding all correlation between different types of the assets out there. And if you really see, the correlation is covariance correlation in that, and then if you have a different portfolio which you create from that, the matrix multiplication is taken care by numpy very well. And there are set of libraries which does out of the box all these operations for you, and using them you can in fact find the risk of your portfolio. You can find the time series, you can find the time series, like we can predict what would be the value of your portfolio or your stock over a period of time. It's quite easy. It's very easy to do, just a 2 or 3 lines of code. Okay, Syed. And you have algorithms like ARIMA, and then which is again used to predict your time series, and many other things are there. Okay, so Syed, okay, well, you don't have a which case. So well, if you really look at it, if and the switch case, right? So I think you could use any one of them. Switch case would be, if you have a smaller set of things, I think it's better to use if. But if you have so many cases out there, I think it's better to use switch, because it gives you one glimpse at one place, right? So in that case, switch would be better. Okay, let's see this problem. So we'll first we will have input it, and this input would be in terms of, so let's say weight. So always have a variable always defined in a proper way. We will convert into float, input, enter the weight in kgs. Otherwise, if you come afterwards, and if you will not be able to understand your own code. Reference is equal to, it's a string in any case, so we don't worry about it. So either so we need to make changes to this. Either you put M or you put F. Okay, so you give a preference whether you want an M or F. Then if the user says F, then he will have to first enter the feet. F, then prompt user to first enter feet. Okay, so we are going to check if come on guys, write reference equal to. Remember, don't put a assignment operator, anyway Python will catch it. And remember, what we are trying to tell is, if it is F feet, then we are going to capture the feet. First enter the feet. So we're going to write height. We're going to write feet part, height in feet. So again, this is a float, input, and then height in inch part equal to float input enter inches. Okay, so now we have it. Now you need to convert this into meters. So how do we convert this into? So we can find out 1 inch to 1 feet to meter. So we will convert the inches to a meter and feet to meter and then combine them together. Okay, and then height in inches, height. So we convert the inches to meter as well. So what is the 1 inch to meter? And then we say height in meters is equal to okay, and then if it is not, then we consider that it is meter. So it is in meters he is giving, so we directly take the height in meters. Same variable we are going to use because that will be a part of our formula, float. Great. So now we have got our thing. So and we take out the indentation, and now we have out of the for loop, if loop, or if condition automatically. So now what is BMI? BMI is equivalent to weight in kgs star, no, not star, it is divided by height in meters star 2. Okay, so that is my BMI, and we will print the BMI. We print the BMI. So once we print the BMI, we are going to check if BMI. So what condition? If BMI is less than 18.5, so directly we can use this print. This guy is underweight. elif. We can directly copy it. I'll show you another version afterwards. There is an AND version also we can use, but this works in Python. Print normal elif. So look at the indentation. Print overweight. Any questions, please type in. And I consider else last. Print overweight, very overweight directly. I'm not going to check for it. That's what it means. So that's your code, and let's try to run this. Before running it, let's go here. So this is one of the on a YouTube, not YouTube, on a web, there is somebody who's giving this service of finding out the weight. So I give the weight in kgs, which is 70, and he gives the option in giving in feet, right? So 5 feet 9 inches. So 5 feet 9 inches, 70 kgs. Let's calculate the BMI. So BMI is nothing but 22.8, and it's a normal BMI, right? And let's try to put this in our case. Let's run it. So enter the weight in kgs. I say 70. I want to put it in feet. So enter the feet first, which is 5 feet, inches 9 inches, and that's giving me 22.78. So well, this our program is giving in a better way. They have rounded it off to 22.8. In this case, we have it in more precise way. So okay, so I think let's try another example here, and let's give 98, and let's check what is the BMI. It's a obese and 31.9, and the height remains the same in inches. And let's try to run this. So what did we give here? We gave here 98, so which is a obese. Obese is nothing but very overweight basically. So we are giving 98, and feet 5 feet 9 inches, and that's very overweight, 31.90. so this guy is giving 31.9. Similarly, what we can do is we can give it in meters now. So we are going to give same thing, let's say 70 in kgs, and now this doesn't have a meters, so centimeter is there, so 170 centimeter, which is nothing but 1.7 meters. So let's try to see what is it. So for 170 centimeter, body mass index is 24.2, and let's try to give the input here. So we gave kgs are 70 kgs, and the preferred unit is meter now, and the height in that I'm getting 1.7 meters, and it is giving 24.221, and I think 24.221 exactly. So that's your program right now. I think please can you execute it, and if you have any doubts, let's try to resolve that right now. We have another 8 minutes. Sayed, you are there, like you can, do you want to ask any other question on like how Python is useful in finance field? I think top-notch companies right now, in fact they are using other libraries like Java, C++, but then Python, the time to development with Python is very small. It takes a lot of time to do using C++ and Java because the libraries are not there much, so you end up writing lots of code. And believe me, you just go ahead and start using NumPy or Pandas and start using some machine learning libraries of Python, and you will see that, and also SciPy, which gives you all the statistical tools. Life is very simple. So everybody has executed it. Keep in mind that if I take out one indentation here, this is going to give me an error. This indentation says that it's a whole set of part of this. If this condition becomes true, it comes here, else it comes here. So this part is only having one part. So this is a different block. I can have as much indentation as possible. That's not an issue. They are independent. It works. Okay. So, and if even in this case, if you want to give indentation, you can give indentation like this and it still works, but the equal indentation has to be there. Okay guys, so I think if you have any questions, you can ask right now on this. And you look at this part, I can also write it like this. So and BMI is lesser than 25. So this is also possible, it works. So either one works in Python. Okay, any other question? If question is not there, I would like to tell you that I'll be coming up with lots of sessions on mathematics for AI. So we'll be covering in depth and with a lot of problems. We'll be solving a lot of problems using matrices, vectors, probability, statistics, and then machine learning algorithms, how internally it works, and then deep learning. And calculus also will be looking into partial derivatives and the slope and the chain rule. And then we'll be looking at in-depth probability, conditional probability, then what is the independence theorem, what is mutual exclusive, and also we'll be looking at the total probability theorem and as well Bayes theorem, and looking into p-value distribution, random variables distribution, variance, and all those things would be looking into it, and we'll be trying to solve AI problems. And this is hands-on Python is required. Why? Because see, all the libraries which you are going to learn afterwards does depends on Python a lot, and then we'll be doing some real-time demo projects as well. So I want you guys to subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon, because any live video comes in, you will not get notified. Okay, so one final question list. If you have anything, just go ahead and ask. Okay, so have you subscribed and pressed on the notification bell icon? And also spread to your friends and other people, about this channel, so people can come and learn. So we will be doing more hands-on coding and coming on Sunday, and then eventually every day or every 2 days we'll be doing it. Yeah, Ramya, I'll be covering topics on ML libraries. Yes. So okay, Prasad. So these were, these were two classes had the same content only, because we are looking at the candidates for different time zone. So that's why it had the same content. Because somebody who's interested in the 4 o'clock, they had this time slot, they wanted to do it, and then we have another time slot for the other one who is interested in that time slot. Okay, Prasad. Okay, it was really nice. You guys were really so many good questions you asked, especially Abhijit and Ramya, Prasad. Really nice. That's really good. Okay, so I think we will end it right now here, and we'll be upcoming with other sessions. Get Okay. Thanks, Prasad. Get as tell to as many people as possible, so that it's fruitful to even give knowledge to as many people, and then we have a better discussions. Different people asking different